we're expecting to have and do have participants from Shoalhaven, West Coast Council, Stonington's coming to join us here in the Melbourne office. I think we might see someone from Melbourne City Council shortly coming here. We've got Yarra Rangers, Peter Maloney from Maloney Systems. So welcome, Peter. Thank you for joining us. Rhiannon with Horizon, Ashley up in Benalla Council. We had Daniel from West Wimmera and Tim Clark from Indigo, and I think Ryan from Nillumbik. So welcome to everyone here in the Melbourne office. I've got a number of our bridge engineers joining in as well that you won't be able to see on screen. So in terms of the team, Adam, can you put up the slides, please? Adam Collins.
Yep.
Yeah, so in terms of, I'll continue on with the just introducing a couple more people in a second, but I thought the breakdown of today's session and just the first 10 minutes on the introduction, then we'll have a look at some recent changes we've made. I'm just mindful that not everyone's aware of some of the work we've done if you haven't downloaded the latest version of the software. And then as per the flyer, we'll look at generic assets, modeling, and the development work we've been doing on a new mobile works crew app. And then after that, there'll be time for some further discussion. And I'm happy to continue on as long as people want to talk, but people are busy. So I think after an hour and a half, obviously people will start to want to leave. So if you can throw Adam to the next one, next slide we have. So in terms of people presenting today, there's, as said, myself, Andrew Sonnenberg. We have Adam Collins coming in from our Launceston office, and he's one of the software engineers for the product. And also we've got Hamish Murphy will present later from our Devonport office. So I went through the participant list just before. And like usual, this is not so much a training session, just an awareness session, but if people are up for training, just doing a bit of feedback noise there. One thing I might just point out, you can mute your microphones. If you move your mouse around, there should be a mute button down the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. So just when you're not talking, it might be handy to be doing that. Adam, would you like to go through some of just the recent changes we've been making and like that for me, please?
Yeah, so in terms of the recent changes, one of the big ones is obviously the generic assets module, which we'll go into more detail shortly. We've added the ability to add new assets while mobile. This was something that was requested by a number of people. We're running in mobile mode. So you just follow the normal process in the file menu, new assets, and you can define what you need to define. And then when you upload back to network, when you return to base, that asset will be created in AssetAsyst. We also have a new feature where you can reassign inspections to a new inspector. This was requested by one of our clients, and I believe this could be of interest to a number of different clients. Especially useful if you have inspections scheduled and assigned to various people, but one of your inspectors may go on leave, and so you want to reassign a portion of those to another person temporarily. So this tool will basically allow you to reassign those inspections, and then later on, when your original inspector comes back from leave, you can reassign them back. The filtering for this is all done via the tree, and I can quickly show you this. Open up AssetAsyst. So we see here on the inspection tree. Now you'll no doubt be familiar with the various filtering that you can do on the tree. And so what we've done is we've leveraged off that existing filtering. So rather than recreating that in another screen, you filter the tree to the inspections that you want to reassign, and you'll see this reassign open inspections link. And that just brings up this little form. You can see the inspections that you have selected for the tree, and you can assign a new inspector. And yeah, basically just click reassign, and then whatever inspections are selected will be reassigned to this new inspector. So it's a small thing, but quite useful, I think, potentially to a lot of people. We've done major overhauls on the work order system and also the defect type system this year. And I know a couple of our clients have installed the latest version and seen these changes, and have been working with the new work order system. This was an area of the software that had been not focused on as much in a little while, and it was definitely time to give it some attention and bring it up to a more modern standard, overcome some of the issues.
I guess, Adam, what it's enabled us to do with the predictive modelling module we'll show later on, it's enabling us to look at the works that are scheduled to be done to assets and look at the change in value of those assets over time, and how, if we're doing capital works, what impact that will have on the value of the assets over time, as well as the maintenance works.
The other thing that's received a lot of attention has been the defect types, which was one of the tired older screens in the system, and that's been revitalised. And we've split out the concept of a defect type from a repair item, which is how you resolve that defect. So there's been a lot of logic and common sense applied to that area of the system. And I know our inspectors within pitt&sherry have certainly appreciated that improvement. We also have added a feature where you can automatically assign structure unit costs. This is based on our engineers' knowledge of the various importance and differences between different kinds of units on a structure. And this is just an example of the philosophy we're trying to put into the software lately, where you have the power to specify to the nth degree as you desire, but at the same time, not everyone wants to spend that time entering all of that data. And so the system will be as helpful as it can and make intelligent suggestions to you. And we'll demonstrate this when we are talking about the predictive modelling a little bit later this morning. We've also added the option for custom deterioration curves. Again, this is part of the predictive modelling system. We had a default curve in the system initially, but you can now define your own curves for different types of components which deteriorate in different ways. And this is an important part of expanding our predictive modelling beyond the structure assets, leading towards taking that to other types of assets. We've introduced a structure inspection app, which runs on Android. All of our inspectors at pitt&sherry have been using this for their inspection works. And I know we've got a couple of people here today who've also been using this. And we've just recently done an overhaul on the geometry section of the structure assets. This has been historically based on the Vic Roads manual, which has allowed for an original structure and 2 widenings on the left and 2 on the right. We now have the ability to store a greater list of different types of geometry, and the way that's handled is just a bit nicer.
Yeah, and again, Adam, I guess part of the reason for that was the current system modelled the geometry off the Vic Roads Performer, which was a paper-based system, which was generated some years ago and hasn't been updated by VicRoads for quite some time. And so we've taken the opportunity now to update that, which again automates a lot of the thinking around the predictive modelling, being able to grab dates for when structures are widened or strengthened or lengthened, and understand which components are affected by that, and put that all into the modelling without making people have to manually think about it themselves so much. So that's sort of a bit of a rundown on some of the recent changes we've been doing. There's been many more, and I guess when people log on to AssetAsyst, there's a screen there that has the latest updates to use, and it's a feed that comes off a website, isn't it, Adam? So any of the users can click on that and see what the latest features are in the software, even if they're not using the latest features, perhaps because their IT department's still installing something, etc. So have a look at that, because if you do provide us with feedback, we are pretty quick to include smart ideas in the software. We benefit as a company ourselves because we're using the system. So we're keen to hear good ideas and include them. And so if you're not seeing those come through, it's most likely you haven't got the latest version of the software. So Adam, did you want to move on to the generic assets section now?
Yes. All right. So just a very brief history of where we've come from and why that's led us to where we are now. We started this journey with the development of Predictive, which began around 20 years ago, initially working with Tasrail. Then we put a lot of our engineering expertise into that software from our own people. We also then developed a system called AssetAsyst. And once again, we took our engineering knowledge and put that into the software. And these systems lived concurrently for quite some time. We were seeing some of the other systems around that were much more generic based, where you could define whatever kinds of assets that you wanted and define any kind of fields you want on them. And some of these were extremely open, so you could manage any type of asset in them, but it didn't do a lot that was intelligent with them. And so we were focused very much on providing the engineering knowledge for a specific set of assets rather than the broad thing. Now, Predictive and AssetAsyst basically came together and became AssetAsyst, and we brought in a couple of other minor asset types like the pathways and buildings. But it was becoming clear that while we wanted to continue to focus on the expert knowledge on these small list of asset types, there was also a need to manage multiple asset types, and it was becoming important to local governments to have an option to manage all of their assets in the one system. And the solution that we came up with was to introduce a generic assets module. So we would continue to put our expert knowledge into bridges and culverts and roads, but at the same time we'd allow you to define your own asset types for some of the more minor ones, like the trees or the street furniture or bus shelters. And so that's how this generic asset module has come about. So
I guess it's fair to say, Adam, we have people here in the moving plant and equipment field, so we're doing crane inspections for defence and other organisations like that, and they've got the same issues where they need expert knowledge about what the relevant codes and standards are, and you need a system that understands that, so that people who have less of an appreciation of those technical standards can still manage the assets in the right way. So in that kind of area, there will be changes that we're implementing that help us deliver a good product to our clients, but ultimately I could see in the future that those clients will adopt systems like AssetAsyst to manage their assets appropriately. So that's that concept of applying our intellect into the technology, which is readily available now. So, thanks, Adam.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the generic asset module allows you to define your own asset types. It allows you to define custom fields for each of these types, so you can enter all your asset level data in whatever form is appropriate. You can define custom components, defect types, and repair items for each asset type. And you can inspect these assets and collect defects. And you can resolve these defects via work orders. So we've implemented the full life cycle for these. Now, the aim here is to provide a familiar look and feel. So we're leveraging existing code, but we're making it more flexible. So you'll see some screenshots here. We actually have a bus shelter inspection, and we're adding a defect. And these will be very familiar looking screens to you who have used either road or structure assets in AssetAsyst. So we're not trying to create a vastly different experience for you. We want you to be able to feel familiar and comfortable and have your prior knowledge still be applicable. So I'll just show you briefly how we configure all of this. So you define a new asset type just from the tools menu, and you can see a list of asset types here. The pre-built system types are in here, like the roads and the pathways and the structures, but you can see that there's been some additional defined in this list, like crane, moving plants, stormwater. Once you have defined the asset type, the next step is to create your components. Now, this is done in the component material screen, again from the tools menu. This screen is built all around the idea of the methodology. So you choose the methodology you want. In this case, we've chosen bus shelters, which is a new asset type we've defined. And we've defined a list of suitable components for a bus shelter here. We have glazing, structural elements, seating, sealant panels, and various others.
And I guess, Adam, it's fair to say this just came about probably about a month ago. I was doing some work for a client in Sydney on their busways. So we're just putting the system to test there in a practical way for ourselves. So, yeah, we've been actively using it for a little while now. And that's sort of, you'll see from the data that we've just put into this demonstration database for today, some of that information collected out in the field recently.
So after we've defined this list of components, we also have a list of materials. Now there's a pre-built list here with some common ones, cast-in-situ concrete, precast concrete, steel, timber, and other. You can define any other material types that are appropriate. And then we relate the components to the materials. So you can see here we have component 1, which is glazing, and we've chosen the material O for other. And that gives us a component. We have a pre-built code for each of these components, and these codes will be familiar to anyone who's used the structures module, particularly if you've done bridge inspections with the Vic Roads or Queensland manuals. So there's a code here. It's the component number and the material letter. Now this is pre-built for you, if that's of interest. This is there so we can comply with some of those inspection standards. But we also have this alias column here because not everyone wants to work on codes. Not every methodology lends itself to the use of these codes. So you can define the alias as whatever you like, and you can see here I've aliased 10 as glazing. So we'll just be referring to this component as glazing throughout the system from now on. So you can enter those aliases for as many components as you want. We define a unit type for the components, And there's some additional columns here which are all to do with predictive modelling. If you're not using predictive modelling, then you don't need to fill out that data. The next step is to define defect types. Again, we're defining them for the bus shelter asset type. And here's a list of defect types that we have created. For each of these, you can have a name. You can, again, define a unit of measurement, and you can give a problem description. Now, when you create a defect of this type, it will pre-fill this description for you, which can save data entry, especially when you're in the field. But you can customize this text, of course, to whatever you want for the specific defect.
Give me, Adam. Ryan had a question in the group chat.
Oh, yes?
He says, I might have just missed, but were the relationship-based codes auto-generated?
Yes, they are. So I'll just go back to that.
It's a combination of the material and the component number. So you select the component number as an end user, and you select the material type, and then you create the relationship between the component and the material. In a way, they're auto-generated by the relationship when you choose a particular component number and material. But apart from that, you can actually change any component number or material type in the system to have your own components. If that answers the question, yep.
Yep.
Ryan.
Yeah, so it's literally this component number and the material letter. And then you can, this is the pre-built code, but you can alias that with anything else that you prefer.
But for example, glazing could have been called component, could have been put in as component 20 if we wanted to. And then if we used O as the material for it, it would have become 20O via the system. Thanks, Adam. If you want to continue.
Sure. With these defect types, we can also specify the type of defect, and this categorization exists on the defects. So if you've marked a defect as a safety defect, you will get any defect types available that are marked as a safety defect type. And we can define what component types these defect types are relevant to. So if we're adding a defect to a glazing component, this defect type raised uneven greater than 20 millimeters will be in the list because it's relevant to that component. This helps to shorten the list so you don't see a whole lot of irrelevant defect types when you're entering your data, but you always have the option to show the entire list if you need to. So we're not restricting that anyway, we're just making that a little bit easier for data entry. And then after we define the defect types, we define our repair items. So I've just set up a single repair item here. So again, you can provide a solution text. Any text you enter here, if you create a defect and you assign this repair item to that defect, the text from here will be pre-filled into the repair description of your defect. And again, you can change that if you want. And then here we define what defect types this repair item will repair. So this is a very generic repair item that I've created, which will resolve all three of these different defect types. And again, that allows it to pre-fill and make suggestions when you're creating a defect. And if there's only one relevant repair item, it'll just select that for you from the list. Again, to make data entry that bit easier. A very important part of setting up custom generic asset types is the custom fields. And you can see here that you can define custom fields at a number of different levels. So a general custom field will show up on any kind of object, whether it's an asset or a defect or an inspection. You can define custom fields that just live at the asset level, the unit level, inspection, defect, or works. And you can also choose what asset type this custom field is relevant to. So if we define a custom field at the asset level for bus shelters, we won't be seeing this field if we go to a road inspection. So setting up the custom fields, I've created a couple of examples here. So we have number of seats and it has timetable. We have different types. So number of seats is an integer and has timetable will just be a yes, no checkbox. We're also defining one here of what we call the enumeration type. And this allows us to provide a list of values. So the paint color can either be red, green, blue, yellow, or purple. And this will be displayed as a drop-down box. Once we've done this configuration, we're all ready to go and we can create our first asset. So you can see this is very simply done through the file menu, new asset. We're going to choose the type bus shelter and we'll give it a name and click OK, and then that asset is created. So we might go to AssetAsyst now and I'll just show you some of these assets in action.
While Adam's loading that up, was there any questions so far about that anyone might just have? Happy to take some now or at the end.
There is also a chat window if you would like to type questions. There should be a button that you can bring up to type in a question.
If you move your mouse down to the bottom of your screen, you'll see a chat box, which you can then click on and type questions in there that we'll answer.
Excuse me.
So Hamish is writing there that you can. There's another feature of the webinar where you can choose raise your hand under participants. Is it? Yeah. Under if you click on participants, bottom right hand corner, there's a raise hand button there as well. So. Okay, Adam, back to you.
Yes. All right. So we're looking at AssetAsyst now. So we have a very simple demonstration database that we've set up. So we're on the asset tree, and we've got 3 asset types here: bus shelters, road, and structure. Now we're viewing some of our road assets in the GIS. Yeah, but we're going to open up a bus shelter. That. And this is one that Andrew was doing just recently in his work. So you can see here we have a name and an asset number. We have those custom fields that we talked about. So we can enter a number of light fittings. There is a timetable present, and we'll choose a type. Now, much like our structure assets, the units of a generic asset are components. So you can see we have the bicycle racks, the glazing, structural elements, the seating, ceiling panels, and roofing and guttering. And we've got a defect here. We have an inspection that we've carried out. Again, these windows are common across all asset types, and you'll have seen this before. And attachments. So we have a number of photos here. This is a bus shelter in Victoria that we've inspected. This photo here is interesting in that we were required to provide a photo of the roof. And so Andrew was inspecting these assets using a tablet, which has an inbuilt camera. But in order to get this photo of the roof, he had a special camera on a pole, which he raised up, and that was then communicating via Wi-Fi with the tablet so that he could get this image from the external camera. So if we have a look in the inspection, again, you have the possibility of custom fields at the inspection level. We haven't defined any at the moment, but we could do. So this is a very simple defect collection inspection. You'll be familiar with these from our road assets. So we can mark each of these components as inspected, and you can see that we've added a defect here to one of these, which is the glazing. We could view that defect here. It'll also show up in the defects tab. So we'll open up this defect and have a look. So again, we can see this is very familiar to our other parts of AssetAsyst, and you can define again a photo of the defect. And then this inspection could be signed off. Inspection recurrence is supported, just like with our other asset types. Now, once we have inspected the asset and collected defects, the last part of the life cycle is obviously to resolve those defects. And we use the work order system. Now, again, this has been updated recently. What we used to refer to simply as work orders is now called basic work orders. And what we used to refer to as routine maintenance and capital works are now referred to as advanced work orders. Now, this one here is a structure work order, but we can define a bus shelter work order. And we can add our defects to this work order for completion. So you can see here we found there's a number of defects available. There's a whole lot of filters here that you can use to help locate your defects. We've got a very small list here, but if you have a large list, these filters will be useful. Especially useful will be, if I can just do that, this one here about whether it links to any other work orders. So if we set that to false, for example, we'll only see defects that are not already on a work order, which is a very useful filter to have. So we're going to add a couple of these defects onto the work order. These are now present, and we can close these defects. We can do that in bulk. If we provide a date here, we can provide a bulk cost as well. We'll select both of these defects and we'll mark those completed. We can also override the actual quantity if we desire. We can now sign off this work order and save us. Now, all the old familiar. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so the old familiar features are here. There's an Excel export, which has a default view, but you can also customize the columns you want. And then there's an email option to email the list of defects to a works crew. And one that's been added more recently is the defect GPS export. This will allow you to create a Google Earth KML or KMZ file which has the GIS points for all the defects, or a GPX file, which can be used with a car navigation system. This can be given then to the works crew as an aid to help them find the defects that they've been asked to resolve. An extension to that obviously is our works crew app, which Hamish will talk about more later. So that covers the full life cycle of a basic generic asset. There's still a lot more that we're working on with this as well. We're going to add more behaviours, so you can define an asset type that will behave like a linear asset, in which case it will have a lot of the experience you have at the moment from your road and pathway assets. Now you may want to define rail tracks or a pipeline system, and the linear behaviour will be very useful for that. We're also working on extending this so that you can use generic assets in our predictive modelling system, and so that you can inspect them using our inspector application.
Ryan, there was a question from you before about showing, I think there was a question about showing the inspections. Is that clear now, Ryan? We answered your query. So do you want to see what it looks like in the form for inspections at some point? I'm sure we've answered it for the moment. I guess where we'll move on to is talk about the predictive. Oh, there we go, Ryan. Thank you. More specifically, whether we can customise certain fields for types of inspections. Okay, Adam, do you just want to highlight again how we do have a custom fields for inspections?
Yes. Yes. So in these custom fields we were talking about, we defined some asset level custom fields, but we can also define custom fields for inspections. We can also do that at the defect level if there's specific information for a custom asset type that you want to record for a defect. So if we go back to our inspection tree now.
So I guess, Ryan, the answer is yes, and yeah, hopefully through what Adam's showing you,
So yeah, we can see now we've created a new field on a bus shelter inspection, and if we add another defect here, you can see now we've also defined a custom field at the defect level in the wizard. So you can create whatever fields are relevant, and they'll only show up for the asset type that you assign them to. These ones I've created are just text boxes, but again, you can make them date pickers, check boxes, drop-down lists, whatever suits.
Thanks, Ryan. And thanks for the question again. It's good to get the questions because people like Adam and myself are quite familiar with the system, and it's not always obvious what's less familiar when we explain things. So thanks again, Ryan. We'll move on to the predictive modelling discussion that we're going to have, and yeah, so far we're doing well to time, which is good to see. So. I think for that, Adam, we're planning on just looking at some simple data we'd put in that database.
Yes, I do have the video if you'd like me to show that.
Yeah, that might be a good idea. Some people have seen it. We put together a video some months ago when we were first launching the predictive modelling module, just to give people a feel for how it works. it's not a highly streamlined video, and we've made some changes since that you might pick. I think it'll just give you an appreciation for what it is, and then we'll actually demo in the database we've got a bit more about how it works. So we'll set the scene now if we can, Adam, with the video. It runs for, what, 3.5 minutes or something? So.
Yes.
Hi, I'm going to show you how to use the predictive modeling tool in AssetAsyst. The first thing we'll want to do is make sure our assets are configured. Most of what we'll need can be found on the Units tab of the Asset Information form. We need to provide an initial cost for each component. This is essentially the construction cost in today's dollars. We already have a current cost for the entire asset in the Financial tab. This is calculated from the structure class and the geometry. Here in the Units tab, we tell AssetAsyst what percentage of the asset cost is made up from this unit. For example, these arches may represent 37.5% of the total value of the asset. We also have an algorithm that can pre-fill the percentages based on our engineer's suggestions of the relative value for each component type. Next, we need to know the year of construction. We can see that this column defaults to the year of construction for the overall asset. However, if we know the railings were replaced a few years ago, we can manually adjust. We'll also need an estimated life. AssetAsyst defaults this value based on the component type. However, we can manually tweak this if we want. You'll see that all of this is designed to make things easy for you, so you don't have to enter a multitude of data for each asset. That still gives you the power to tweak things to a fine degree. Finally, we'll choose a deterioration curve for this component. If we don't specify anything here, AssetAsyst will just use the default curve. But we may want to choose a specific curve for this component. You can define as many of your own custom deterioration curves as you want from the predictive modeling menu. Our asset is now set up and ready to go, but we'll also need some inspection data. That's where we derive the condition of the individual components. We need a completed condition inspection. As you can see, we have one here. We need to make sure the units are fully assessed. We're using a condition range of 1 to 4 according to the VicRoad standard. We'll also want to make sure we specify an exposure class because that allows AssetAsyst to determine a more accurate estimated life for the components. Now we're ready to begin modeling. We head over to the predictive modeling menu and create a collection. We give the collection a name and specify a methodology. Now we select the assets we want to deteriorate. In this case, I'll select a couple of bridges based on owner. AssetAsyst validates your data to make sure you're not missing anything required for the calculations. Then we click Finish and the deterioration begins. Once AssetAsyst has finished deteriorating our selected assets, we can export the results to Excel. Simply choose an asset from the drop-down and the information is presented to you. If you require further information, check out the AssetAsyst user manual in the Help menu or call our Help Desk on 63231946 or email it@pitt&sherry.com.au.
Yes, so now that we've done that brief sort of YouTube video, we'll just have a look at the database that we had up before and just run through some of those features. And I see, Ashley, you've asked the question, does that do it any asset class? I think you're asking, does it do it for any type of asset? At the moment, we haven't rolled it across to the generic assets, but that's one of the next steps. And we've set the coding up so it's quite easy for us to do. But I guess what we see is we need more people to jump on board with the generic assets, and then if they jump on board with that and put in their data, they'll then be able to make use of it. But there's no point in saying, here it is, until people have the data in there to actually make use of it. So the answer is yes, you'll see that very, very soon coming out. So Adam, you're just bringing up the database now?
Yes, just grabbing that file.
Thank you. What we'll do after we have a bit of a look at the data in this demonstration database, we'll just have a look at some of the output. I grabbed a graph this morning from one of our engineers working here, looking at capital works and how that might vary over the years and things like that, which comes directly out of the predictive modelling spreadsheets that we just developed out of AssetAsyst.
Now you notice that part of that configuration was giving a cost to each of the units. And we mentioned that you could automatically assign those. So we have this button here, calculate current costs, and we'll just fill in all of these for you. Now the way this is working is based on, again, expert knowledge that's come from our engineers, with the understanding that the relative importance of a bridge approach versus an approach barrier or a waterway. You can see here that it's basically assigned a 0% cost to the waterway and the ID tag, whereas it's assigned an 80% cost to the actual concrete pipe. And these percentages are then used to generate dollar values for each of these components, which are based on the overall dollar value of the asset. So that's just a demonstration of how the system can do that for you. So we'll
So Adam, in that we've got the financial tab there, and so you might want to just show in the financial tab you can have the software utilize current structure classes to then work out based on area of structure the dollar value of the structure, or if you want, you can type in a specific value if you've had it valued by someone else and you want to put in a particular value. The software allows you to take that value. And then with those percentages, if we go back to the units tab after that, yeah, so Adam's just pointing out the area where if you tick that box, it'll do it automatically from a unit rate per square metre that you can configure in one of the menus. Coming back to these percentages, those default percentages you can put into that component material relationship. You can say typically the bridge approaches are worth, say, 5% of the structure, but it'll then look at what components you've put on that structure and then from that it'll normalise the percentages to make 100% so that we're not over-allocating the value of the structure. So it's quite clever in the way it automates that. It means that people can get some basic condition information, put that into AssetAsyst, and within no time at all, using some of the default information, come up with an estimate of the current condition-based valuation for their asset. So it's a task that would otherwise take you, days, if not weeks, to do manually, is actually being all handled by the program very quickly. So you make some key assumptions and then it'll go and do the rest. Just like that year of construction, it is pulling that off knowing when the original structure was built. But if you want to overwrite that year of construction, as per the video we showed before, you could overwrite it and say, no, I know we replaced that component that was in the year 2000. Just type in that and it'll handle that when it does its modelling of the asset. So it's been done to quickly populate things like the estimated life. That's coming out of the table. But if you don't like that estimated life, you think on this particular structure, that particular component of it is of a different life, you're free to then go and individually change it. each and every structure if you want to. And I'd recommend that where you have more complicated structures, perhaps structures that have had various bits and pieces replaced on them over time, or other types of assets you replace maybe at that bus stop. You could be replacing a seat and you want to put that it's actually newer than the rest of the shelter, and that way it'll accurately reflect the value of the asset. So yeah, keep going, Adam. You're showing some sample output there. I think you're just running the modelling, were you?
Yes, so I've just produced the model for this bridge we've been looking at. Oh, sorry, this culvert.
So Adam, did you want to load that up, or you will in a minute?
Let me just bring that across to the screen. So yeah.
Did you want me to talk through that, Adam, or you will?
Yeah, I'm happy for you to talk through this.
Yeah, so what we're seeing here is you can model multiple assets at one time, and then what this spreadsheet does is it saves all that data that's come out of the modelling process, and this front sheet of the workbook allows you to get a snapshot of the data that's being produced. So we've got asset ID. Adam, if you just highlight over that, if there was multiple assets there, you could flick through the different assets that you have. Over on the right-hand side, it's showing some of that financial data that's come through from the system. And I guess one of the interesting things is the condition-based valuation. It's grabbed the condition data that the inspectors put in, and it's looking at that and saying, well, where is this asset on its life cycle, using the deterioration curves that are linked to each and every component to work out what the value of the asset is today. For the purpose of this sheet, we're then pulling out data for a forecast period of 10 years' time, but in the spreadsheet, we store data for the next 100 years. So you can actually go into other sheets of this spreadsheet and grab out the relevant data for any time up until the next 100 years, which for most assets is long enough to see what's going on with them. You scroll down a little bit, Adam, there's a graph there, and so what the graph is summarising here was there was some work that has been scheduled in 2018, and it's saying, well, how much difference does it make to this red line, which is the value of the structure with works versus if we did no works? Where's the actual structure heading? And the interesting thing out of this is we can do this across a whole range of structures and then summarise it at the network level through one of these spreadsheets, which we'll show in a minute. You just scroll further down there, Adam. It's showing each component, and then we look at the remaining life for each component that is coming out, as well as what we call a functional limit, a point at which it's probably better to be replacing that component than trying to repair it. And that's just using our expertise, in this case for a culvert structure, when we think on the component's life cycle where it would be ineffective to be trying to repair it. The intervention years is saying, given the age of the asset and its condition, we'd expect to see problems occurring with each of the components currently. And so we could be expecting that we will have to start to do some maintenance to these components, but it may be able to be left for some time. But if you left, say, the bridge approaches for more than 5 years, given the age that we've keyed in here, which is probably quite an old age, and the fact that it's in condition state 2, I think the modelling is suggesting it's soon to move to condition state 3, and you can put in intervention levels in the software, which we didn't go into in detail before, and it's using those to say, well, definitely in the next 1 to 5 years, you're going to have to do some form of work, and if you do that work, you probably won't get more than 9 years more out of it until you might have to reconstruct it. That's what we're saying. That last line there, there's schedule work. So that's pulled in that works that we put onto the work orders. And in the work orders now, with the basic and advanced work orders, you can flag whether it's maintenance or capital works that you're doing. So we could actually put in an advanced work order, we could say, let's replace all of these components and put the dollar value of that, key that into the system. It would then pick that up and show how the asset value will change as we replace things. So likewise, if we replace an individual component, it will grab that, identify what year you're replacing that in. And this output looks at the next 100 years. So if I schedule to do works in 60 years' time, the software will find that, and you'll be able to produce graphing on that. So I think maybe to show it in a more practical case, sort of had one of the engineers just working for a council at the moment. Adam, could you show one of the graph that I flipped you through this morning? So we've done a number of these graphs now for a number of councils across Australia. So we're working right up the east coast predominantly, right throughout Queensland, New South Wales. I think this data might be for might have been the Queensland council we're working for. And it just sort of highlights some of the things that you can get out of it. So I'll just adjust my screen a little bit here. Yeah, so what we're finding, the blue line there was the overall value of the asset. And then the red line was if we did no works to it and replaced nothing, where would things go? The green line is the capital expenditure, and what we've just done at this stage, we haven't optimized anything here, but we're just using the raw spreadsheet data. And what we've started to say is when the assets reach their intervention levels and they're beyond repair from the predictive modelling, let's go to replace them. And what you find for this council, a lot of their assets are of a certain age, and therefore there's a lot of capital expenditure that would occur in 2060 to 2080, and it probably shows for this council where they are in their development history and the age of the types of assets they have, that they're actually going to be hit with quite a big demand on capital renewal at a particular point in time, just because of the way their assets have developed. If we look across Australia at other clients we've done this for, which have either shorter lived assets or have been in a more developed area, we don't see such large expenditure all in one band. It's more gradual and uniform. So I just thought this would help you appreciate how you can go from that very individual level of an asset and a component, and even looking at the life of an individual component and the cost of an individual component, aggregate that up to what it means at a structure level or an asset level, and then across that, what it means at a whole network level. Because at the end of the day, as asset owners, we need to ensure that we allocate sufficient funds at the right time to get the maximum life out of the asset, but also meet the required levels of service. And we don't want to be underfunding, and we don't want to be overfunding. So through the predictive modelling, we've developed a way to deal with all that complexity, but very quickly. So here we're doing it for owners that don't necessarily use our system, but we're able to do it very quickly, very accurately, in terms of using their actual condition data, the data they have on the age of their assets, the data they have on the financial valuations. And often what we find through this process, we can get some anomalies out of it, and what we find is often the input data has got the problems with it. But when you bring it all together, you see where the weaknesses are with the data that you have. Because if you get a strange result, you can then track it down, and it might be the valuations are totally wrong for some assets, or the year of construction is wrong, and things like that. So it allows you to then critique that data, find issues with it, and resolve those. is the basis of it. So, Adam, was there anything else that we wanted to mention back out of the software, do you think? I might have opened.
Yeah, I've just noticed that there's a question here from Ashley.
Yep.
Does that do an asset class assets? So we're in development right
Adam,
now.
I think we covered that one earlier when I think the question was related to does it roll across all asset classes, or do you see it as a different question?
No, it's essentially the same question. Yeah. So yeah, basically we are extending that right now in development, so that will go across all the asset types, including the generic asset types. The other thing I thought might be worth mentioning is we've been mentioning during this about a condition scale of 1 to 4, but the other thing we're introducing is also the ability to have a range of 1 to 5. This is especially important for building assets, which are generally rated on a 1 to 5 scale, and potentially useful for road assets as well. So yeah, there will be that flexibility. With the structure assets, they're generally rated on 1 to 4. That's where we start with the system, but yeah, we're extending that.
Yeah, thanks for that, Adam. Yeah, I guess it's fair to say we've put a lot of the coding in place. As end users, we haven't got access to that just yet. But yeah, it's not very far away at all. So what we might do now, Adam, just to stay on schedule, which we are at the second, we might just move over and let Hamish have a little bit of a chat about the development work we're putting into the mobile WorksCrew app. And that's advancing along quite nicely. And I guess a number of months ago, we set some objectives which were around the generic assets that we've been talking about and completed. But one of the longer term aims which we set for ourselves to complete by pretty much the end of this year was increased functionality for WorksCrews. But where we're at the moment with the software, you can go out with a laptop or motion tablet. So I was up doing road inspections with a crew of our engineers on the Pacific Highway recently, and we're using them motion tablets there and taking photos and logging data, and that works quite well. It's quite impressive the way it does work, and you collect your data very quickly. However, what we've recognised is there's a group of workers out there that aren't so well supported by technology, but they're given a phone to carry around in their pocket. So that's all they've got. They don't have a good motion tablet to use. So what we've said is, let's develop something those people can use out in the field to easily do their job, and that'll reduce the cost to our clients as well. At pitt&sherry, it doesn't worry us when we use the software because we fund the best technology we can get for our staff to do the job efficiently. But unfortunately, some organisations don't do that the same way. So, Hamish, over to you to explain what it all means for people wanting to use tablets, phones, etc.
All right, thanks, Andrew. So I'm just going to show you a couple of mock-ups of the Android app that we're working on. So the first screen that you see there is the default screen when you start the app. If there's a little blue dot that represents your location. So as you're walking around, you see these other points. So these are assets or bus shelters. So what you can do is you can just tap on a particular asset and then find out a bit more information about it. So in this second screenshot, I've zoomed into a particular bus shelter. So you can see my locations close to this one. I've tapped it, and then down the bottom here, you'll see there's some general information about that particular point that you've selected, so you can confirm that you're looking at the correct asset. If you then tap on this bar down the bottom here, you go to the third screen, so you're looking at the asset. So you can see at the top here, we've still got the map that represents where the bus shelter is. It's isolated it from the other assets. You get to see information about that particular asset, including how far you are from the asset. So the app will help you locate the asset that you're trying to find. And then we've got a list of defects. So currently there's one defect for this bus station. When you're out in the field, you can see existing defects that are from inspections, and you can use the app to resolve the defect. So if I tapped on that particular defect, then you get to see the defect screen, and here you can see more details about the defect, and then you can mark the defect as closed. And then if you tapped on that, then you would come up with a dialogue, so you could choose, say, put a comment in there, say who actually addressed the defect, what they did to resolve the defect. So generally that's how the app's designed to work.
Yeah, so I think it's fair to say it might have some, even for non-works crew people, it may have an advantage with, if you want to go out and do ad hoc inspections, non-scheduled ones, you could go along and you could add a defect into the system through this works crew app. It just won't be a scheduled inspection as such. That's what we see. The way it'll work by the end of this year, in terms of if people purchase the app, they'll be able to go along and do that. So example equivalent for AssetAsyst at the moment is you can go along in mobile mode and you can just click and add a defect at any point you want outside of an inspection. And that defect is logged by the system. You can add it to work orders. You'll just find that it's one that's not come through based on a formal inspection or a scheduled inspection. So,
yeah,
there was a query there, wasn't there? I saw it just come up. So would it be possible to download an app onto Apple iPhone? So Hamish, you want to talk about the platform on which we've been coding this and how it works?
The short answer is yes. So we're using a cross development platform that allows us to write this in Android and for iOS. So at the moment we're working on the Android app, but yes, there will be an iPhone app as well to support that. So yeah, like you were saying, Andrew, you can go address defects that you're scheduled to do as a worker, but if you see a defect and an asset nearby, you can also use this to add that ad hoc defect, and then back at base they can flesh that out a little bit more. And the other thing I was going to say is that the app is designed to work across a network. So the inspection app, you have to prepare that with a special application that's on the desktop, and go out, collect the data, come back, and then import the data using the special app. With the Android app, it'll sync directly with the AssetAsyst database. So depending on how your IT sets it up, you can synchronize the latest defects with the app out in the field if you wish. So yeah, that's pretty much it, Andrew.
Yeah, no, I think that's been good, Hamish. So yeah, I guess the main thing is we wanted to show people where we've got to with it. And that, yeah, it'll be out by the end of the year if anyone's interested in using it for their works crews or themselves to do ad hoc sort of inspections. So, I think the other thing we didn't quite touch on is if you're assigned certain defects, Hamish, it'll picks the difference of who's using the device.
We haven't really fleshed that out yet, but if there's a defect that's assigned to you, then it'll know that you're logged in as you, and it will assign a different colour to those defects.
Yeah.
So the normal ones might be black, and then ones that are assigned for you might be yellow.
Yeah, because I think we had the idea if you're out there and you saw something else wrong, you might want to add it in, but if it's already there, you need to know that it's already there, but you don't want to know necessarily everything. You need to separate out between what you want to know and what
you want to focus on your work. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and with that will obviously come permissions and things like that as well. Some organisations will say, I don't want anyone touching anything, adding anything in. Don't mind if they close it out, and they've got the right permissions through AssetAsyst. So there's that bit kind of be worked on as well over the next couple of months. Okay, so moving on, what I might suggest we do now, Adam, I think on our agenda we had that we'd do some discussion, open the floor to general discussion. So does anyone have oh no, we had just one other thing before we did that actually, sorry. We had some just more discussion about future works, I think. Adam, we'd listed a few points we wanted to cover because it's not the only thing that we're doing at the moment. So did you want to run through those, Adam, briefly?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're wanting to do is to put some effort into reporting improvements. There's a lot of reports that have been around in the system for a little while and could use a bit of a facelift and just an improvement. So we've put a lot of efforts recently into, I guess, the collection and processing of data, and now we want to really bring up the reporting of that data up to standard and improve that. The other thing is that because we've added a number of asset types, we've imported the bridge module from Pitt&sherry, and we're adding the generic assets. So we want to make the reports more globally useful across different asset types. So that's definitely going to be a focus in the future. We've been looking into a tool that allows you to do bulk GPS photo matching. This would be especially useful for a linear asset such as a road. You may be driving down a highway, taking photos of defects as you find them. This tool will allow you basically to take these photos, match them by so these will be geolocated photos. So match them by their GPS coordinates to assets and units, and basically import those photos in and add them to the assets, create the defects. So it'll be a bit of a semi-automated process where you'll throw a list of photos at it. It will come up and say, well, here's what I've matched up. And then you can go through and say, oh, this one's a defect, here are the defect details. So it would be a way of, again, improving data entry and making things quicker and easier.
Yeah, so Adam, I guess an example of that was we did the 150 kilometres of roads for Roads and Maritime Services in New South Wales, and we could grab with our GPS-enabled camera footage at regular intervals if we want, and we can also grab specific defects. In this tool, what you do is you grab those bunch of photos that you collected and said, I want those put onto relevant road assets. The tool will identify where the photo was taken. It'll find out the road that is near that asset. It'll put it onto that asset as an attachment. And then when you go to view it through the GIS interface, I see that you'd have a layer, and you'll actually be able to click on that layer and move down that road and actually see the different photos as you move down the road. So rather than having a video footage, you'll actually be able to choose the quality of photo you want to collect when you want to collect it, and you'll be able to view it and have that layer, and you could view that point in time that you're interested in viewing the photos that you took. It could even be as simple as walking down a fence line and wanting to get footage along the fence. You can go along, and whether you click your photos or you take regular time space photos, it'll then attach it, and you could play that back at certain times, and it'll pull that data out that's being attached to the asset for viewing. So I think it's a very easy thing for us to program, but I think it'll be quite an interesting thing for pitt&sherry to use on the jobs we do, but also for our AssetAsyst users to have a benefit in their own organisations. So yeah, if you keep going, Adam. Thanks.
Yeah. You might want to talk about these next ones actually with the risk service.
So the idea of the risk tab is one of the important things as an asset owner is actually managing risk, and this is where as a company providing the software, we're able to actually put in, I think, more of our intellect into the software to help clients manage risks. So example of that could be, I also mentioned it down further, we've been doing slope stability work for a state road authority, and there's certain parameters you can collect to then understand the risk of a slope failure on a road. But that's not the only place. But in those cases, we're putting together the expertise of our geotechnical engineers to actually understand what parameters you need to measure, go and measuring it, and then we're producing output to our clients already. It'd just be nice to grab that thinking and just put it into the software. And again, not hard for us to do. So I guess this was a placeholder to say, yeah, watch this space. There will be more and more of the engineering, scientific side of things coming through into specific modules. And that way people can use generic stuff if they want, but if they want real engineered things and that intellect, they'll be able to still get it through the modules. Level of service, again, is a big one. So on assets, it's important, and we report on that as asset owners about levels of service. And I think it's such an important area that we should dedicate more space for that in the actual software so that it's clearer. You can define what your levels of service are going to be and report on those and see it on particular assets. So that's what that one's about. The optimization algorithms goes along with the predictive modelling. So we're optimizing some of the expenditure that we see for asset owners through doing the predictive modelling. It's just that we haven't got the software to automatically do that. And so we've got in our minds how to do that in an automated fashion, which we'll do because that will save us time and money in the product we deliver to our clients who don't use our system. But again, for people using our system, we'd like them to get that benefit as well. So again, we've got that mapped out, but it's not probably going to be programmed in until early next year, I'd say, at this stage. The other ones, heavy vehicle route assessments, another thing that we've often done, but outside of AssetAsyst. And so we've done some work around the country helping asset owners understand the risk of heavy vehicle movements. And so we could be pulling in some of the data we have in AssetAsyst and running that through the routines we've developed there. So again, that was another area we'd like to develop and put our expertise into. I guess the last one there, the pavement testing by the deflector graph, another example of pitt&sherry. We've written software that analyses deflector graph truck information and presents that spatially. And it interprets the readings of that and shows you where your pavement, what's happening with your pavement. Again, we see that as another thing we should do is just integrate that into the software. So again, people who collect more sophisticated data than purely visual data can actually start to make use of that data and make use of it in a way that's not cumbersome for them. Do we have anything else after that, Adam, or that was I think that was the last one?
I believe that was all.
Yeah. So what I wanted to do we have any other questions from participants at this stage? And so you can use the chat box, or you can just unmute your microphone and ask a question if you've got one.
Hey, Andrew, it's Adam Manley here, mate.
G'day, Adam.
Just wanted to, I heard you say before we're going to talk about reporting.
Yeah, so we mentioned with reporting that we're at the moment in the AssetAsyst, there's a reports menu. The layout of that menu, we are going to work on to actually make it clearer to the end user. So what Adam Collins was explaining was we'd integrated various reports over a number of years, And as we've done that, we haven't really streamlined the presentation of it. So there's some really good reports in it, and we want to make sure they're clear to the end user, and also make sure they roll across to all asset types, including our generic assets, smoothly.
Yeah, the one question I'd probably pose would be modifying them to suit, like with the older Bridge Assist, we could we had a range of options for the presentation of the reports. And
Right.
I'm finding at the moment I'm a little bit stuck with the level 2 Queensland type reports. I want to put a fluffier front page and whatnot, and I'm just finding I have to do it in Word or whatnot, you know.
Yeah. So probably the best way there is to offline from this meeting to show me what you saw as the benefits.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Refactor it. Those benefits actually do come through. The intent was we've had a number of users come over from Bridge Assist into AssetAsyst because there's far more advantages in AssetAsyst. And the intent was not to, remove anything that people saw of benefit. So, so I'd be interested to see what that change was, after the meeting. I'll make a note.
Yeah, more a point now, but is probably, to put it simply, customisation of the reports or personalisation.
Yeah. Okay.
And you said you're looking into that, so yeah. Thanks, mate.
No worries, mate. Thanks for that, Adam. Thanks for the question. Yeah, so Peter, you've made a comment there, and Rhiannon, was it? A few comments coming through, so I'll just go in order. Would it be, oh no, we had that one before, yeah. So Peter, you said you really like the overall approach where you are using the software to bring together the engineering expertise you've developed from the specific projects to the broader applications. So yeah, thank you for that, Peter. Tim, you've said, is it possible to get a shapefile of the defect points in AssetAsyst to enable integration with other systems? So at the moment, you can export defect points, can't you, Adam? But whether it's the file format that Tim is after, I'm not sure, but it might be just worth showing that.
So what we have at the moment is, you see in the map menu here, there's this save defects to layer option. Now, the 3 file formats that we're currently supporting are those ones I mentioned earlier, with the KML, the KMZ, and the GPX. And you should find that most GIS packages will be able to read any of these 3 file formats. Shapefile is another potential that could be added to that. And that basically will generate a layer containing all your defect points.
So I guess it's fair to say, Adam, we've been using that for some clients who don't use our system. We can give them a export out of that, and they can load it up in Google Earth and see where the defects were that we'd found, basically. So, yeah, and if there's a type there that you think would be beneficial to yourself, well, just let us know. Obviously, there's a list there. It's not particularly long at the moment, so if there's something obvious that we've missed, happy to add it in. So that was all the written questions. Was there any other questions anyone would like to raise at the moment? Seems all good. So we had it scheduled to finish at 11:30. It's now saying 11:29, so I think we've done well. As I said before, if anyone is wanting training in the software, we're more than happy to provide it. You only need to contact us. We have the online sort of support where we can screen share. Obviously happy to have further webinars if people see the benefit or want further things explained. And of course, happy to come and visit as well, which I get around to a number of clients myself, but not all. But it's always a pleasure to come out and visit people. So, I might wrap it up there, Adam, unless you think, and Hamish, unless there's anything we've missed. All good?
Yeah. I think we've done very well.
No worries. Well, thank you everyone for participating in the event, and it was a while since our last webinar, so yeah, I'd like to hold them a little bit more regularly than we have, but we've been having our heads down making heaps of changes, so and hopefully, yeah, we've been getting some very good feedback from a number of users with the changes we've made, and yeah, we obviously, I think we're going at a rate where those changes are still accelerating, if anything, because there's a lot of good ideas that we've got that we want to apply, and yeah, clients have provided a number of good ideas as well. So keep the good ideas coming and keep the feedback coming to us. We appreciate it. So thanks again for your time, and we'll leave it there.